Right. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Table Talk, which is conversations about food, but not necessarily about recipes, though they may come in. We welcome questions from the audience. We'll have a dedicated question and answer time a little later on. But if you want to put questions into chat while we're talking, that's also fine. But for now, please welcome my guest today, Sonia Jabbar, who I have known for a very long time online and only met once, at which point, I gushed at her and she ran away and has not seen me in the flesh since, so maybe that was a hint. But yes, I knew Sonia as a writer.
Please come.
I knew Sonia as a writer primarily, and I would see her work in a publication I wrote for as well, Outlook Traveler, and her photographs over time. And then at some point, 10 years ago, she moved back to the family estate in 2011. That was prompted by a sad event. Her mum passed away, and Sonia went to take over the running of the plantation that our family has owned for many generations. So what we're going to be talking about today is primarily tea. But before that, hi, Sonia.
Hey, Peter.
Thank you for joining us. This has been a terribly long day and you've been up with the sun and you're exhausted. So I will be conscious of the time. Table talk sometimes does go well over 2 hours, as I told you. But I will not insist that you stay around for those 3 and 4 hour conversations. We will be mindful of it. But thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.
Thanks a million. Thank you. Thank you for honoring me.
Pleasure, and the honor is all mine. I thought we'd start out, as I usually do with Table Talk, by asking you about your early food memories. When did little Sonia first become aware of the preparation of food and how it was done? And how did you get involved with the actual understanding of food?
So my earliest memory of eating something was I was probably about 2 or 3. I remember very, very clearly that we were in Kashmir and we were sitting in the hotel, and I had my 2 brothers with me, and my mother had dished out strawberries for us, strawberries and cream. And so we were like 3 birds with our mouths open, and my mother was spooning strawberries and cream to each one of us. And that was my earliest memory of her. Okay. So I think my love for Kashmir and my association, my very, very, very precious associations of warmth, family, delicious food starts right there in Kashmir. Yeah. Later, I think so that taste of strawberries, which was actually quite an exotic fruit, because when we were growing up, they weren't available in Calcutta, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't have very early memories of food after that. I then jumped to probably 7, 8 years old, and then my grandmother's kitchen. And my grandmother, that's my dadi. We belong to the Jalpaiguri family, and the kitchen is quite famed. In fact, a cousin of mine has become a very famous chef in London, Asma Khan. She's a celebrity chef. Asma's story is very interesting because my dadi's khansama, because we had khansamas in those days, right? So, and you have to understand that these kitchens, these recipes were very guarded. So when we'd go for these elaborate lunches and dinners to my grandmother's house in Calcutta, and there'd be these very, very elaborate banquets. And if you like something, you'd say, and everyone called her Amma. So people would say, Amma, ye itna umda khana. So, what is it? What did you do? And she would just smile graciously and say, khao na, like never part with the recipe. So now what happened was that her Khansama, his name was Haji Sahab. So Haji Sahab learnt under my grandmother. And then when she passed away, Haji Sahab went not to our household, but to Asma's mother's household. And Asma then grew up eating Haji Sahab's khana. And then a lot of those recipes ended up in her kitchen, right? So it's this shared legacy. I mean, I just think it's wonderful that Asma today is this celebrity chef, and it actually has to do with my grandmother. So there were kormas and of course biryani, and there's a very particular style of food and cooking, which is kind of eclectic. Um, and as you know, in Calcutta, I mean, there was no issue about beef, so there was a lot of beef as well. And my parents were quite anglicized, so we grew up with a lot of stuff like mulgatawny soup and steak and what else? Caramel custard. I mean, and just fish and chips. Yeah. So that kind of thing.
And did you learn to cook in those days?
Not so early. My mother was a very fine cook too. So I think I started off, my interest in cooking was baking. And so I baked for a while when I was about 11. I started when I was about 11. But cooking, I had to learn when I went away to college in America, and I just couldn't bear not eating desi khana. So my father gave me a little cookbook, and that's how I started cooking. And I wasn't bad at it. And one summer I spent in France um, with this really wonderful family. Friend of mine, Natalie, she's still my friend from college. And her father, Monsieur L'Enfant, was this just amazing cook. And so in the evening, in the afternoon, he would ask me, what do you want to eat? And by the time we'd come in the evening, the whole house would smell of this just fabulous, well, usually something garlicky. And then he'd send me down to his wine cellar to match. He'd say, okay, I'm cooking this, and then go and pick a bottle of wine that you think will go with the food. So in that, I mean, it was a wonderful education on taste and food and texture and all of that.
I relate parts of that story because, yeah, my family was Anglo-Indian. So the mulgatawny soup and the custards and baked stuff and all that were very much part of my growing up as well. Sort of a Burmese part, part of that as well. Because for me, like khawswe is comfort food. My grandma and my dad's family spent many years in Burma and only left
Really?
ahead
Wow.
of
Yeah, so that was very much growing up in Cal also, right? Like houseway was just part of growing up in Cal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So take us, I mean, yeah, but I don't have the, I can't share that going down to the cellar and picking out the wine part of it, that is like a little out of my aukat. But
Aukat was, as I was a impoverished student, Monsieur L'Enfant actually took me under his wing. It was the generosity of some wonderful people, and that kind of generosity. I'll just say one thing. I don't know whether everyone's been blessed like this or not, but most of my life, at least, no, I won't say most of my life. Well, now most of my life, certainly. But as a student, from the time I was in college till about 10 years ago, I didn't have very much money. I still don't actually. But it is through the generosity of people who open their homes and open their kitchens and open their larders. So, I lived in France with Natalie and her family for 3 months without paying a single naya paisa, in Paris, just outside of Paris. It was their generosity. And then in all the years that I was in Kashmir, I mean, the generosity of ordinary people, like, I'd land up somewhere, village in the middle of nowhere, and we would go into some stranger's home, and what would be laid out would be nothing short of a feast, and so many of those people I never saw again, never met again. So aukat, no, something else.
Yeah, I take that back. But yeah, I think, yeah, who we are attracts, I believe, stuff into our lives. And in that sense, I do think that it is a reflection of you, that as well. I mean, yes, circumstances, people, a different era, and all of that kind of thing. But nevertheless, Sonia, being Sonia, would attract a certain kind of fortune into her life, I would say. But we'll leave that for a second. And before we get down to understanding the tea part of it, perhaps you just take us through how your life went from those early days of the strawberries in Kashmir and the Calcutta dinners and things like that to 2011, if you could sort of walk us through that part of your life.
That's a lot, but okay. So I went to school in Cal. I had a very privileged upbringing. My father was a tea broker. My mother was a housewife, and we lived very well. And sometime in the late 70s, no, well, mid 70s, we had a tragedy in the family where I lost my elder brother in a motorcycle crash. And with that, the family's fortunes kind of tumbled. So apart from the terrible tragedy that struck us, my father then lost his business and we went through a really hard time. So by the time I was ready to go to college, there was no money. So I had to get a scholarship. But the wonderful thing was that my parents didn't know and didn't care where I went. And the way it happened, I wasn't really interested in academics at that point. I just wanted to get out of Cal. I wanted to explore the world. And a friend of mine who'd made it to Princeton, she just tossed me this brochure of this college. It was called Sweetbriar College. And I was crazy about horses. And she said, you want to try there? And I just wrote off to them and I kind of forgot about it because I'd also gotten I'd gotten admission into Jadavpur University. So I actually started Jadavpur University. And then suddenly I got a letter from Sweetbriar saying that I was in. And I was thrilled because it had 3,300 acres and a wonderful writing program. So I spent 4 years there. And it was pretty amazing because it was a small southern liberal arts college, but it did something. So the downside was that it was a wealthy women's college, and um, it came as a big shock to me because I did not I didn't know that America was like that. For me, America was Woodstock and Archie comics. Okay, like some combination between Woodstock and Archie comics. And here was this very conservative white women's college in the South. But they had amazing academics. And it really blew my mind, honestly. So I started off with studying sciences, and then I went into literature and art and all of that. Anyway, I got out of college. My father passed away, and I came back to India. And then so while I was in New York, because I spent about a year and a half or 2 years after college, I was working. And my flatmate was a wonderful guy called Siddharth Gautam, and Siddharth actually opened my mind to politics. Um, he was very, very, very vigorous and very rigorous in the way he looked at the world, the way he looked at injustice, and the way he looked at sexual politics, the way he looked at gender. So for me, Siddharth, we would just talk so much. Siddharth also had Hodgkin's disease, and he was in New York actually getting treated at John's, where was it, Sloan Kettering. And then when I returned to India, Siddharth also returned, and we kind of started almost living together again in Delhi. So Siddharth stayed with me a lot, and actually it was the most exciting period because not only did I meet a lot of the women in the women's movement, a lot of the stalwarts in the women's movement at that point, but I also had Siddharth with me. So my political awakening at that time was yeah. At the same time, around 92, no, what was it? 89 was when L.K. Advani started his Rath Yatra, if I'm not mistaken, right? 92 was Babri Masjid. In 92, I met this other wonderful person, Dilip Simeon. He's a professor of history. And a lot of the other people like Vrinda Grover, Amar Kanwar. And we started this little group. It was called Sampradayakta Virodhi Andolan. And we worked on communal issues at that time. And from there, it was like a very easy slide into Kashmir. And Kashmir from 94, 95 onwards, till my mother passed away. So those 15 years 15, yeah, 2005. No, 95. Sorry. Yeah, yeah, I'm losing track. So, um, so Kashmir became a very, very big part of my life. Going to Kashmir, writing about Kashmir, photographing Kashmir. I also made a documentary film. And it was all consuming, and I never finished my book. And just as well, because I got it all wrong. Um, I I actually I was convinced that Jinnah was wrong, Gandhi and Nehru were right, and that democratic India was a work in progress that could accommodate everyone's aspirations, including the Kashmiris. And we started working on South Asia. I had a lot of Pakistani friends, and we started working on this idea of some kind of, not like a European Union, but some kind of dissolution of borders, and not just us, but also the women's movement was, someone like Kamla Bhasin was very, very active on this. There were other people like Gautam Navlakha and Tapan Bose, who were also very, very active in the Pakistan-India People's Forum for Peace and Democracy. So there were all these groups, and actually had this idea that we could make things happen. We could fight against this communal mindset. And at that time, it didn't seem, in India at least, in Pakistan, I mean, we used to joke that it was a basket case, but India, it didn't seem that I mean, I certainly could not have anticipated what we are seeing today. So my argument was always to my Kashmiri friends that, look, come on, come to the table. What is it that we can't solve? So anyway, I mean, I think the closest we got politically to that dream was in 2002, when Vajpayee Musharraf actually started their meetings, and we had this dissolving of borders, and we had some cross-border movement, like the opening up of Srinagar, Muzaffarabad, and then the Punch Rawalakot, and all these things. It was really an exciting time. And a lot of the Kashmiri militant groups actually were open, believe it or not. And I just feel like, if that had been clinched at that point, we would never have seen this rise of fundamentalism that we've seen in India today. Anyway, lost cause, lost dream. And then 2011, my mother suddenly goes and dies. She was as fit as a fiddle, and then she had a heart attack and passed away at the estate. So life really actually just went boom. From me living a very bindas kind of life in Delhi and being very, very politically focused and focused on art, literature, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly, like, oh my God, there's Naxalbari. And I mean, it was always a beloved place for me, a place where, many, many lovely holidays. And I always imagined that my mother would live till 90, and, I mean, somewhere running Naxalbari was somewhere in the distance, it was never something which was supposed to happen now. And it was crazy. It was like being thrown into some completely unfamiliar world. I mean, I had not a clue about business. I couldn't read a balance sheet. I had no idea. And when, I mean, the first few months I was in this blur of grief because by now I had lost almost everyone in my family except for my brother, one brother, surviving brother. And my mother was very, very strong in my life. I mean, she was a very, very powerful presence, not always benign. I mean, we used to fight a lot, you know, this, but I think we were alike in many, many ways. So anyway, um, ended up, my God, 1,200 acres, 500 permanent labor. And by the time my mother died, they all adored her, you know. So, and I was always the baba, you know, the like the chota baba. Not only, not, you know, my brother was sahab, but I was always baba. And here, you know, this baba is coming, and so it was very, very hard in the beginning. And yeah.
You have some pictures of the estate over the years. You think you'd like to share those now, and then we'll talk more about tea?
Okay. Do I do the share screen?
Yes, please.
It says whiteboard.
Uh, no, your share screen button at the bottom. You
Yeah,
should
I
see
did.
it.
It says only host.
Check again. You were able to do that before.
Yeah, no,
Tried it out.
I don't know.
I just checked the settings. It's fine. Yes, we're on. But
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's.
you seem to have your whiteboard, not your
Hold on.
Google Slides.
Oh, gosh. Sorry.
No issues.
Can you see?
Not yet.
Oops. Ah. Okay.
Perfect.
Now?
Yes. You just need to click the present button and we're on.
Okay. All right, guys. Everyone, forgive me. It's not really organized that well, this presentation, because Peter said no presentation. So, and now we're doing a presentation. So, Peter, do you want to stop me when you want to stop me? I mean,
You just go.
okay. So I'll just talk. So this is our estate. We grow joy. We also grow tea. We have horses. So the story starts here. This gentleman here is the Nawab of Jalpaiguri, Nawab Musharraf Hussain. That's my grandfather and his brother. Probably early 40s. Nawab Musharraf wasn't just some indolent Nawab. He was actually very, very hardworking and very talented. He was one of the early Indian tea planters. And in his time, planted and owned some 33 tea estates from West Bengal to, or North Bengal to Upper Assam. This on the right, this lovely lady is my grandmother, my dadi, Sayyida Badrun Nisa. And she actually ran Naxalbari for some decades before my mother took over in the early 80s. This is my mother, Dolly Jabbar. Just one interesting thing. Sorry, I forgot to mention, but my parents were what's it called? Love jihadis. So my father was Muslim and my mother was Hindu, and she never converted, but she wasn't very religious either. So, but her religion she found in tea, and she was very, very passionate about it. And actually took up Naxalbari's production from some 200,000 kilos to 600,000 kilos. So she planted a lot, and it was generally very, very wonderful um, for the estate. This is just one of the sections that I planted. This is me in my Vardi. So I'm very hands-on. I do a lot of the planting myself. I do a lot of the manufacturing of tea myself. This is me with tea seeds. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing which is innovative, and it has to do with climate change. We'll come to that later if there's time. Just run you through this. So this is kind of like a view of Naxalbari. We're in Darjeeling district. We're not far from Bagdogra, and we're about 1,200 acres large. As the crow flies, we're 120 kilometers from Mount Kanchenjunga, and this is important not only because it's so damn beautiful, but it also impacts the climate. It impacts us in a very wonderful way because we are located in the foothills. We're at 800 feet, and then Kanchenjunga is 26,000 feet, and it's from 800 feet to 26,000 feet is just 120 kilometers. And in that, you have some amazing changes in, because of the sudden change in altitude, you have some amazing flora and fauna. So you have this lush tropical flora, and so all the wonderful creatures that go with it, including herds of elephants, leopards. Unfortunately, no tigers in North Bengal anymore, but it is really a very special place with and you can see the trees and the size of the trees. This is just a random photograph of our estate. So it's all undulating land. It's actually very pretty. Horses, we've got my horses, dogs. Okay, this is an interesting part. I was very keen to rewild some of our, so there's the tea growing area, Peter, and then all these estates have, so we've got 1,200 acres, but not all 1,200 acres is under tea, right? So we've got a lot of area where we don't grow any tea. And I thought, since we've got these elephant herds coming and we've got this leopard population and we've got all this happening, why don't we try and regrow some of this forest? And so it's not about, it's not afforestation, but it's really rewilding, which is you're trying to create, you're trying to mimic the flora of this area before the tea estates were, before the tea estates. See, vast areas of jungle, vast swathes of jungle were cut down to create these tea estates, right? So this happened in the 19th century and early 20th century. So I mean, one of the things that I thought that we could do. So, okay, sorry, I'm jumbled up a little bit because we're actually packing in a lot. Um, so one of the main issues about elephants in North Bengal and actually all of India, we've got a very large population of elephants, but we've also got a huge human population, and there's always conflict because we have highways where there were no highways. We've got so these huge infrastructure projects of dams and malls and blah 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 of development, right?
Yeah.
So even the passageway of elephants, the traditional migratory routes, elephants need a lot of space. So their traditional migratory routes are always getting blocked. Like every few months, you'll have some new construction happening, right? And so these poor creatures actually don't know where to go. They, they're being hemmed in from all over the place. Okay. So this creates a lot of stress in the herds, and it makes them very violent. And there's something called human elephant conflict, which is very, very big. A lot of NGOs are working on it. And I just thought of, what's in my control? Let me try and do what I can that's in my control. So this patch of land, which is 1,200 acres, is under my control. Let me see what I can do here. So I created a number of initiatives that would mitigate this, and the idea was that even if the elephants can have a few hours where they can just chill out and relax and have some fodder and have a place where they can bathe and drink water and just chill out without anyone shouting at them, throwing stones, chasing them, shooting at them, killing them, injuring them, it's good. So so I started this project of rewilding. You can see up on top, this is the picture on the top is 2018, and the photograph at the bottom is 2020. So in 2 years, um, we've actually recreated this forest, and of course this year it's even more lush and dense.
Right.
The other thing I did, which I'm very proud of, is this. It's a reservoir that I created. The land kind of has this natural dip, and the geography kind of lends itself because a lot of seepage water naturally goes in there. And I said, it's quite close to the forest. So Naxalbari is sandwiched between two degraded forests through which the elephants pass, right? So they come from one forest on our west, they cross over to the other forest on our east, east to west, and we're in the middle.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, what if we create some habitat for them where they can relax and actually the benefit for us has been that so you can see, it's pretty degraded, this land. And here you can see this is in progress where we've actually created this reservoir. It's quite large. And this is this year.
Mhm.
Okay. So you can see how in 1 year, this whole piece of land, which is about 20 acres, has just greened up. So we've got tea planted in all these rows. These yellow flowers are something called crotalaria. It's a nitrogen fixing plant. And basically, the elephants come here and hang out.
Yeah.
Also, another wonderful thing, you've seen this whole explosion of, so we've got lots of peacocks, we've got something called the Bengal fox. Oh, we've come into tea. Whoops, sorry.
So let's talk about tea then. since you got these things, uh, I did intend to do this the other way around and talk about the elephant part later, but we'll come back to the elephants bit. And tell us about your learning journey and what goes into making tea, since we're here at these pictures now.
Okay, so this is a tasting session actually with some students. I do a tea connoisseurs course. It's a 3-day course, and a lot of people from all over the world come and attend. So tea, it's the most amazing. I mean, it's been such an adventure, Peter.
Mhm.
I had no idea. I had no idea that tea would be so all consuming, from the plant. So here's the thing. Why is my life so busy? Because there's the agricultural side of it, and then there's the actual making of the tea and tasting of the tea and selling of the tea, right? In any other crop, just the agricultural side of it take up would be all consuming, because um, so so in North India, where we are, um, we're North Bengal, but this belt of tea is called North Indian tea. South Kannur, etc., Valparai, all of that is South Indian tea. So we are North Indian tea. So North Indian tea, the season starts somewhere in February, early March, and then by November, which is now where it's getting colder, we start slowing down, and by mid-December, we're done, right? So March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, 9.5 months, maybe 10 months if you're lucky. So in these 10 months, Naxalbari has to produce some 700,000 kgs of made tea. So 700,000 kgs of made tea multiply into 4.5 of green leaf is what is required. 4.5 kgs of green leaf is required for 1 kilo of made tea, right? So first you have to produce it.
You don't just grow the tea, you also make the tea.
Yes, we have a factory.
And is that standard for tea plantations, or is that
Yes,
something unusual?
yes. No. So the today it's different. I'll come to that later. But the traditional old companies like ours, you had the estate, you had the factory, and you did everything. And that's why in the old days, the manager was this godlike figure, because he had so much to do.
Yes.
And it's just amazing that these people actually did it, you know. In those days, without internet, without telephones, without anything. I mean, even my mother, when she came to Naxalbari, there was no electricity. So our factory would run on generators. And when manufacturing time would be over, there was no bijli in the house. So it was candles. And in summer, I mean, you just had to jhelo. There was nothing.
Mhm.
So electricity actually came probably late 80s to this area. Can you imagine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I've
So
seen a little bit of the tea life, but only in the south. Valparai that you mentioned and Munnar, I visited in a number of estates.
mm,
I mean, there it's all pretty much all corporatized. I didn't visit any private plantations, but I did get a picture of how many things there were to do and how much work there was and the kind of life.
yeah. So from planting young tea, and the planting of the young tea has to be perfect, because it's going to last you 40 years at least, if not more. We've got tea bushes from 1890. So
Yeah.
so you better do it right, otherwise you're going to cry. for a long time. And then those tea bushes have to be brought up, it's 4-5 years before they're considered mature tea, and are producing enough. So in those 4-5 years, the care that is required is just incredible. I mean, it's just incredible and then we have to do this over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres. So you need a very, very skilled team. You need very skilled workers. And I'm not even talking about plucking, I'm just talking about the cultivation part of it.
Yes.
And then plucking, when the season starts, our workers are so incredibly skilled. Let me see if I can move this. Now we're still into tasting. You can just see the variety of teas that we make. You can see the cups go from light to darker to dark. These are just different kinds. This is a special tea which we call golden tea. This is again in the factory. Here we're back to elephants. Sorry, it's all jumbled up. So yeah, so the agriculture part of it is something which requires a lot of care. And then when you bring that tea, so that 4.5 kilos that make 1 kilo of made tea, when you bring that tea into the factory, now most tea estates today in India, apart from Darjeeling tea estates, most tea estates produce only CTC tea, which is your chai, right? Danedar chai. Naxalbari does a range of teas. We do chai, and then we do probably the best green tea in India. And I don't say that lightly. I don't like to brag, but that tea is really, really, really good. And then we make some orthodox teas and some oolongs as well. So the making and crafting of these teas is another whole ball game. I mean, it's just I could speak about that for hours, so I won't get into that right now.
But tell us about the varieties of teas that you spoke about. If you could just run through, like CTC, as far as I know, is your crushed egg curl. It is the tea powder that we get, which is standard, which people boil the hell out of. Get this from rich color, put lots of milk in.
Yeah. So it's not powder. The powder is dust. So you have different grades. So first you manufacture the tea. Even CTC, it's all manufactured, and then after that, it has to be graded and sorted.
Mm-hmm.
So the grading and sorting is another art.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Danedar chai. So you need good CTC. It should not be scoffed at, because to get good CTC, you really have to work hard. Ask me, really have to work hard. Everyone in the factory has to be on the ball, otherwise it's just. So we've got some incredible what we call sardars in the factory who manage everything. And I think it's just incredible how talented people are, and how they actually know their work, and they know what you're looking for, and if you explain to them what you want, they produce it. So so we do CTC, we do, like I said, green tea. Green tea is tea which is not fermented. Now actually black tea is also not fermented, it's oxidized, but it's called fermentation for some reason. But tea is actually not fermented. It's just left to oxidize, and in the oxidation it changes color, and you get the cup, you get the strength of the cup is because of the oxidation of the tea leaves, right? So in green tea, you don't oxidize at all. So you basically take fresh green leaves, and then you either steam or you pan, and that's to stop the oxidation. So you cut the oxidation as soon as you can with fresh green leaves. And the whole art of making green tea is, how do you make green tea which will have briskness and no bitterness? Because one of the issues with green tea, and a lot of people make green tea in India, and it's god awful, because it's so bitter. So people have been told drink green tea to lose weight, and drink green tea because it's good for your health, but it's undrinkable. So the whole art is how to create this without the bitterness. Okay, so which we do, um, and it's really fantastic. So you want the green tea. What are the lakshan in that cup? It has to be fresh. It has to be floral. It should not be bitter, but it should still be brisk. With black tea, with your CTC, it should have briskness. It should have fullness. It should be able to take milk. It should be able to take sugar. Yeah. So if you make a cup of CTC which is thin, then when you put the sugar and the milk, it becomes thinner in taste. So it's not good. It's, the market doesn't want that. With orthodox, you have many different styles of orthodox. You have something which is the Assam orthodox, which is a more malty cup. The cup is similar to CTC, except it's lamba patti. And then you have the Darjeeling manufacture, with Darjeeling orthodox teas, has over the years, it's gone from people actually drinking it with milk and sugar. When I was growing up, everyone drank Darjeeling with milk and sugar. But in the 80s, I think, is when the European markets got very active with Darjeeling, and especially the Germans, and they started insisting that Darjeeling make lighter and lighter cups. So it's really, the character of Darjeeling tea has changed. It's quite a fascinating story of how you can change the whole character of this experience of drinking tea, just because the market wants it. So it's gone to
One layperson question here again. So the different kinds of tea, I mean, there's obviously differences in plants, okay, and what's grown in a certain area, the terroir, all of that makes a difference, and what's grown in different parts of India. But what are the, is it the style of manufacture that makes the difference out here? Or is it grown differently? How, for a layperson, what's the difference between all the teas that we are likely to encounter?
terroir is a very important part of it, of course. You soil, water, rainfall, climate, how cold, how high, all these things make a huge difference to um, the character of the tea, the aroma of the leaves. I mean, I would say that's why Darjeeling is still unmatchable when it comes to orthodox. I mean, we have to work really hard to come close to that, and we still don't match Darjeeling. We can't. Just can't, because of terroir. So so we make our own style of tea. It's like saying, uh, should a Chilean wine attempt to be a French wine, or attempt to be a Chianti? No, it's a Chilean wine, or an Australian wine, or whatever. It's not going to try and be something else. And I think with tea, people are now being a little more open to single estate teas, just trying different kinds of teas and not judging them like people used to judge wines or whiskeys earlier. I mean, Scotch whiskey was a generic Scotch. Nobody says generic Scotch anymore, right?
Okay. So there again, the basic question is, so what are the different, I mean, how do we identify, what do we look for in different kinds of tea, aside from the terroir part of it?
Peter, I'm very uh, I just feel actually taste is something which is very particular. Okay. And I don't I'm not a great fan of this, that this tea is the best tea and you have to drink, and if you're anything of a tea snob, you should only drink this. No.
I don't mean to imply that.
No, but I'm just clarifying that.
Sure,
I'm
sure.
just, yeah. So I'm saying that there are people like for example, Gujarat is a very big market for quality CTC tea. Okay. Really respect that. Really respect what they're looking for in that chai. Okay. So for me, that person who's wanting that particular quality of CTC is no less than the German who's wanting a particular quality in Darjeeling. Okay. And just as you will not foist that CTC onto the German, I mean, I don't think that the Gujarati should be should have the Darjeeling foisted upon them.
Sure.
So um, when you're looking for tea, like what should you be looking for? I would say freshness. It should taste good. It shouldn't taste stale, and it should be brisk. It should, and what is it? Tea. I used to drink a lot of coffee earlier as well. And I know how tea wakes you up very gently. There's something, the way the caffeine kicks in your brain, it's a very gentle kind of like, you can be sitting in bed and drinking your tea and you just like slowly, it's very zen, just kind of.
Yeah.
A coffee, and like, boom, right? So I think the most wonderful thing of being alive in this at this time is that you have available to you so much, so many different kinds of teas. You can get your Nilgiris, you can get, you can actually ask for a particular Darjeeling estate. You can buy a, if Earl Grey is your thing, which is not for me at all. I just abhor it, but somehow it's we're constantly asked to make this Earl Grey, and I have to make it. I can't bear to taste it because I just hate it so much. I hate flavored teas, and I dislike tisanes. So it's not for me. um, I don't mind flavored if it's iced tea. If I I make I make some very nice iced green teas which you can then flavor. It's nice. I mean, then it's just another drink. But with hot drinks, I mean, I just like the the drink to be what it is. So the leaf to actually unfurl and curl and uncurl and release. It's a very spiritual experience actually. If you make tea, do you make your own tea?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Chinese and the Japanese have a whole tea ceremony, right? We don't. But if you get into it, if you boil your water and you pour your water and you wait and you and it's just really interesting, like with some teas, just half a minute more and you'll get a bitterness, if it's just steep too long. And the same tea, the second steep will give you another sensory experience. You'll be like, wow, I didn't get that in the first steep. So it's really interesting that this one plant can give so much, So when you are tasting, like when we taste teas, we look at, I taste every day. That's part of my job. I wake up in the morning, I go out to the field, I come back, I go into the factory, the tasting cups are up. We go through batches and batches and we taste against other gardens as well. We get samples. And what do we look for? We first look at the leaf, the appearance. It should be pleasant. It should not look dirty. It should be even. It should, if you're making black tea, it should look black. It should not be, so the appearance, it should have some kind of glow of its own. Sometimes in cleaning, what happens is that the surface of the made tea gets rubbed and then you get a dull looking tea. So you don't want that. So there are many things that you look for even in the appearance of tea. You don't want fiber in the tea. You don't want stalks in the tea if it's green tea. So there's all these things that you're looking at. And then after that, when you steep it, then you look at something called infusion, which is it's the leaves that you then, gosh, let me see if I can bring, yeah. Whoops. How do I do this? Yeah. Are you still seeing this?
Yes.
Yep.
The elephant on your.
Yeah. I don't know how. Stop share. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to draw that up. I want to show you what that infusion looks like.
Yep.
What happened to the screen?
You
Oh,
need
weird.
to.
Goodness, did I?
Yeah, we're back to not seeing your screen now.
No, I know, but I need to. I think I may have just closed the wretched thing. I wonder if I can just. Hang on.
It's in your slides in the browser.
Just one sec.
Yeah.
Just trying to find an image where the infusion. Okay, this is not bad. No. Okay, so this here on the left, this is the infusion. So this is what the steeped tea leaves after steeping for 3 minutes. So this in particular is a green tea,
Mhm.
and we've taken the leaves out, and here we're checking the infusion. And this is a beautiful infusion of this green tea, because um, what normally happens with inferior green teas is that this becomes yellowish or brownish or whatever. But here you have a beautiful green,
Mhm.
and you have a very light lemon cup, and that's perfect. So this is your infusion.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Peter, shoot on. Tell me.
Right. When you got back to Naxalbari 2011, uh, what were the what was the learning curve like at that point? What what did you have to learn really fast?
Well, I had to learn how to stop the chori.
Mhm.
There's a lot of corruption, and corruption is just, I think, um, endemic in our country. So the first thing I had to do was try and stop the leaks, and the whole you know running a tea estate is a logistical nightmare.
Mhm.
Actually, you run on very similar principles to how the army is run, as far as logistics. The way things have to be deployed, the kind of stores that you need to purchase, and so you're constantly having to deal with purchases, and then your sales, of course. So I had a really hard time for many years. It was all very shocking, because never having been in business, I had no idea how that this was considered normal.
Okay.
So one of the things that I've tried to do is actually bring in some sense of ethics in in our daily discourse around business, around um, labor issues, around wildlife, around conservation, around in the environment. So try to actually create some kind of ethical framework, where I'm very transparent about um, the way the company runs. And actually anyone can come. I mean, I'm always around, and any worker can come and um, talk to me and tell me what's going on and tell me what their problem is, and I'm there to help fix things, right? So um, I found, like, actually in the beginning, I really had to be quite the monster, uh, and then I think over time people got what was happening, and got understood what I was doing and why I was doing it. And then they figured out that their well-being really dependent on the well-being of the estate. So I try to foster this sense of ownership, that uh, we may own it, but the generations of, so the way it works, Peter, like if you are a worker, right, you own uh, a, you are given a house. Okay, so you're given housing, and that's really really something very big in this area. And most people who work on tea estates, the basic funda, like the basic reason you would work on a tea estate is because you get a free house, and you get a lot of other free things like rations and blah blah blah. But you get a free house and you get assured work 365 days of the year. I mean, minus the Sundays or holidays or whatever. But you are assured work and you are assured a house and you are assured a little patch of land. And that's really important. Now, when you retire or you die, your nominee, it could be a son, daughter, whatever. So if you're a permanent employee, the next generation gets it, or whoever you nominate, right? So it's called a badli. So basically, it is generations of tea garden workers. And if you travel through North Bengal, and I really have to say this because um, you'll see a kind of prosperity here that you don't see in the rest of India, really. And it has to do with tea. It has to do with the positive impact of tea on people's lives. Um, you know, most of our okay. One really interesting thing. Most of our labor, like when we had the lockdown in 2020, no notice.
Yeah.
I was terrified that people would be without food. So we stocked up, we just went out and we bought rations. And then I said, okay, you see, the harvest had just happened, the paddy harvest had just happened. And I knew that some of my labor had um, land, had paddy land and had farmland and were okay because they just harvested the paddy, right? But what of those who didn't have access to food, right? So then, so we quickly drew up this list, and it was really interesting because of some 500 and something workers, only 30 people did not have land. I mean, that's incredible. That is an incredible thing that you have workers who own and who can grow their own food, who have access to food. I mean, it was something really, really wonderful, and it was a wonderful discovery for me. So, working in a tea estate, they were able to save money to buy land.
Mm. So maybe Heather has a question. I hope I am getting the pronunciation of the surname right. Heather Krylik has a question about one. How has it been getting your staff, the community around the plantation, to having elephants, to adjust to accept elephants coming through Naxalbari and being making space for them?
Difficult one. It's you think you've cracked it, but just when you think you've cracked it, something happens, and you have to go back. And so initially it was really me laying down the law and saying, no, we've got to allow this. We've got to allow this because if the elephants are relaxed, they will not destroy your houses. They will not destroy anything. Let's just let them pass through. So that worked for many years. This year we've had some crazy shit happen. I mean, it's just been pretty bad this year. We've had so there are these so the way when boys gang up together and then they go around town and so boy elephant groups happen, and they so we had a few of these come through and actually damage. So we had one accident, horrible accident where this woman, this elephant was passing through. It was a tusker, and she, in a panic, like the other workers said, "Don't go there, don't go there, don't go there," and she couldn't understand.
Mhm.
She was with a friend, and the friend ran towards the workers, and she ran towards the elephant. The elephant freaked out and attacked her, and she was grievously injured and nearly died. So that was early this year in March. And then after that, we've had about 3 or 4 houses being damaged, which had never been, which had never happened before.
Mhm.
So we are now having to set up some kind of fund, because we'll have to reconstruct their homes. I mean, there's no question. We'll have to do it. So, the thing is that if you don't do it, then it causes resentment, and then your whole everything just falls apart. So it's just this year has been difficult, even for us with the elephants. They've damaged a lot of young tea which I had planted last year and this year. So, yeah, so, but, you have to just, if you've decided on this experiment, see, I don't see any alternative. And I just think that we have to deal with so many natural calamities like droughts and hail and thunderstorms and flooding, and so elephants is just one part of this equation, and we can't suddenly start flipping out and you know
Absolutely.
yeah. So
We need to have this understanding of how the, the increasing footprint of humans is disruptive to uh, to nature by and large, and we're seeing that happen in so many places. We, aside from the massive specter of climate change itself,
mm,
whether or not you agree, one may have their points of view on it, but it is a fact that we are seeing change, and any agricultural kind of occupation of is subject to disruption. All the
yeah,
things you said, you're dependent on rain and all of these things. And if you're going to be growing stuff out there in the open, wildlife is going to be part of that discussion. Uh, you started the Happy Sapi Foundation, and what when we're asking everyone who's attending this is not mandatory. This is not a fee for attending Table Talk. But if you can and if you have the means, please support Table Talk. I will send the link to everyone who's attending. But tell us a little about Happy Sapi Foundation. And after that, I'm going to take a few more questions from audience.
yeah. So I realized that I couldn't do this on my own. Earlier it was me alone battling this with the forest department and people and the villages and everything, and I just thought, this is crazy. I'm this kooky old lady who's running around fighting with people to give elephants some space, and it's just not okay. So I thought, okay, how to do this? The best way is to co-op children, and I thought back to my childhood and how did this love of elephants, I mean, it got inculcated when I was a little child. My father was he used to hunt, and we would go to UP for these shikars, and my father would have these hunting elephants. Um, so we grew up every winter going to um, UP to um, for these shikars and to have the shikari elephants, and they were just marvelous creatures. And so um, I thought, why not see how these kids, so these kids would earlier the whole, all the villages, when the elephants would go, oh, everyone would be out screaming, shouting, big tamasha. So then I said, okay, you know, I think everyone's very excited to see. I mean, it's just such a joyous thing, to watch these elephants. So everyone wants to watch it. But how do you watch without making a noise, without disturbing the animals? So we really started with that, and started with a group of kids, and it was, showed them some films, uh, talked to them. So the workers, our workers' kids. And then when I saw there was enough interest, I actually got permission from their parents. We had a form where everyone signed that, okay, we would have regular, um, actually an environmental education for these children. And the idea was that, okay, can we bring up um, a generation of barefoot conservationists? Is that possible? Is it possible that at some point these kids could be so well versed in the way of elephants that, perhaps if there is a time in the future where maybe this could become some tourism thing in the area, in North Bengal, instead of farmers chasing the elephants out, you actually create homestays, and you have people who are knowledgeable and who guide tourists to safely watch these elephants. So this was the idea. So that's how we started this kids club, and it's pretty good. We still run it. We have about 120 children, and now the idea is to spread. So so between Naxalbari and the Mahananda Wildlife Sanctuary, which is about 35 kilometers away, we have a number of these tea gardens. Okay, and as I was saying earlier, there's so much disruption between the highways and the tea factories and the malls and blah blah blah. The elephants are actually trying to, go through this maze, and every few days something new comes up, a new bridge, or some way gets blocked, and they have to again negotiate, and then there, people who block their way. And so the only way I can see is that if we create a similar empathetic populace between in all these tea estates, then we can have the elephants travel through these tea estates between, in their traditional migratory route between the Mahanada forest sanctuary and Naxalbari.
Mhm.
And back, so then they would have safe passage. And that's all that I'm actually looking at, nothing else, just safe passage. So it actually means a passive, rather than, you don't actually have to do much,
Yeah.
you just have to chill out and not freak out if elephants are coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bharat in the chat had asked about how anyone can volunteer to be part of this. I have sent the link, but do you want to just tell people how they could be part of Hati Sati if they wanted to? Are there any
Yeah, well, the first thing
requirements?
is that you would need to be completely vaccinated, because we've been very, very fortunate in our little pocket. We've been safe from COVID. We just had one person who ended up in the COVID ward because she was asthmatic, and then um, she got out after a week. She was fine. So we've actually had no COVID deaths here, touch wood. And so the first thing would be that you are fully vaccinated, and then you just send us your CV and tell us why you want to come.
Are pets allowed? Bharat asks.
Are pets allowed?
Yep.
What kind of pet?
If someone were to come to volunteer.
What kind of pet?
Yeah, Bharat, could you tell us what kind of pet? But yeah, while Bharat
Do you want to bring him on?
cat and dog, says Bharat.
Cat and dog.
Yeah.
We could try.
Right. So
we've got cats and dogs.
Get in touch, Bharat. You have the website. I put the link up there. You can just check it out if you're interested. There was also a question from Mukta. Hi, Mukta. Glad you could come. A friend of mine who asked about the woman who got injured by the elephant and how is she?
She's okay. She's got bad scars. I'm going to try and rehabilitate her somehow. Like what's important is that she should get back to work. I think she got very, very frightened. Obviously, it's not. But the main thing is that she's safe and she's okay.
Mm-hmm. So Nilanjana had a question, so I've asked her to join the panel. Nilanjana, could you turn on audio, video, whatever you're comfortable with?
Hey! Hi!
Good to see you.
How good to see you.
Well, I think my question has disappeared from the chat, but I'll try and paraphrase as much as possible. I've known Sonia for a while, and I thought I knew a little bit about what went into the running of Naxalbari, but I actually found myself really moved by this, by this evening, because I don't think I'd understood fully how many moving elements there are, how many different parts there are to the estate. And my question was something about, there's this dream that accelerated during COVID, people wanting to go back in some way, reconnect with the land, grow things, do in a sense, what you've done, but on a much smaller scale. But I was looking at it from the years that you've been there and everything that you've had to handle, running the business, the political situation, paying wages to workers during demonetization, setting up creches, learning the land, right? None of it is easy, and it depends on a kind of complicated interdependence and a connection between the humans, the animals, the land itself, right? And I look at this and I think of, some of the years when it was really, really hard, especially when you were setting it up, and it seems like every year brings its own set of challenges. But it also seems in a way as political as the life that you left behind in a different way. And so simply, what has it taught you? What have you learned from this? What are you learning with every passing year? This business of being on the land and tending to it and having respect.
Nilanjana, I love it so much. I mean, I just, in the morning when I wake up, I just feel like, wow. Tara, my daughter, for those who don't know, when we say good night to each other, she says, "Good night, Mom. Good night, Mama. Be ready for the adventure tomorrow." So she's totally into this, that every day is some amazing adventure. And it is true. I mean, it's just, I'll tell you something. I came out to save Naxalbari. Naxalbari ended up saving me. It has given so much. It has given in this amazing way. And, if you tune into land, if you tune into soil, if you start understanding soil, the ground we stand on, the ground we walk upon, if you actually start there, if you actually start working with your hands in the soil, in the smell of the soil and the texture of the soil, and you have soil under your fingertips and it's your fingernails, and it's just some magic happens. It's, I haven't even begun to start describing what magic happens, but magic happens. things start to happen quite magically. I don't think there is a day. I mean, I think every day is just really busy and it's full, but it is fulfilling. Every day I feel like I've made, you know, so here's the thing. I still don't take a salary. I haven't taken a salary for many years. I don't think people know that. Because Naxalbari wasn't doing well earlier, and I just thought I couldn't do it. I could not take a salary when, I had to first pay everybody. I had to pay our debtors. I had to pay off everyone. Even now we're doing well, so I think I should start taking a salary. But so I grow my own food, right? And it's the most amazing thing. Like, I grow my own rice, and I grow my own sunflowers, and everything's an experiment, right? Because I've never done it before. I grow tea. I know how to grow tea. I never knew how to grow rice. And who's helping me grow rice? It's my workers, right? They say, "Nahi, nahi, aap aisa karo, isko aisa." So today it was just like, you know what, Kazimuddin, you gave me this shit advice. Like, look how tall the paddy is grown. It's just ridiculous. It's flopping over. And then he says, but this is what I know, and it's just very nice, the kind of relationships that we have now. It's camaraderie. It's just, you know, it's something else. So anyone who has a dream of going and working with land and going back and working and growing their own food, please do it. Do it on your windowsill if you have to. Start there, because that's where I started in Delhi, in my chat, growing vegetables on my terrace. And yeah.
If you try to grow stuff, you gain so much respect for this. And I've said this before in these particular conversations, the table talk conversations. I've been trying to grow a curry patta plant for 2 years, and I still have not harvested one leaf from it because something, the snails come and finish it off. A caterpillar came and did the bunch of them. Each time I'm nurturing it back into play. And that is the only food. I mean, I like to grow flowers primarily, but I decided, let me try and grow something that I can use. And just this one thing of trying to grow goddamn curry patta, which I'm not even very fond of as a herb. All right. But it just was the easiest one. And I thought it would be simple.
So here's what you have to grow: something that you either really need or you really love. Okay. So, you know what happened with the avocado tree, right? I planted this, I made this sapling from a seed. And then the sapling grew and somehow grew, and I planted this sapling, and it grew into this spindly tree. And every year I would look at it, and I had no idea how to grow avocado. And every year I'd look at it and I'd say, like, what the hell? What is this stupid tree? And then 2 years ago, was it last year? Last year, it produced papaya-sized avocados. Okay, huge. Then I looked at this and I thought, must be some jungly variety. And the avocados will taste horrible. And if they're so big, they'll taste awful. My God. Oh my God. Buttery, creamy, just the most amazing flavors, right? So here's the thing, you learn when you start growing things, you learn, like Loki. Do you know what our Lokis taste like here? Loki is the most tasteless vegetable that you can buy in the market, right? our homegrown Lokis are so dense with nutrition. They are so incredibly tasty that even Tara is just like, "Oh, I want the Loki, pass the Loki." So just have our rice with some ghee, the Bengali ghee, the brown Bengali ghee, and
Chana ghee.
lao, lao. And that is a meal of its own, It is so incredible. So, yeah, so here's the thing, like when the lockdown happened and I realized, my God, we've just been thrown into this shark infested waters, the whole country. Where are people going to get food? Like, how are people going to eat? And then I was determined. I said, no, the first thing we have to do is just be food self-sufficient. We cannot depend on governments actually to deliver. And this is actually, it ties into my critique of what is happening with the tea industry today. Okay, so the government of India is really horrible policy of encouraging farmers to grow tea. So they're switching from food crop to cash crop, right? So they're going from kisan to chai bagan ka malik, and everyone feels good and everyone, right? But two things happen. One is that that particular farm that was producing food, whether vegetables or paddy or wheat or whatever, mustard, now just all that's gone. And you have this horrible, because they're all planting the same clone. And I can tell you about clones. Uh, you know, uh, I showed you that photograph of me with seeds. There's a very conscious effort on my part to plant seed, um, which is because one is that seed carries a much more diverse DNA, right? And clone is literally the clone of the mother plant. And generally, what is being planted massively all across India is just two cultivars, just two cultivars. So the clones of two cultivars. So you have this monocrop, which is, I mean, I just think it's a disaster, right? And so between destroying food and in its place putting in this monocrop of just these two cultivars, it's not going to last long. It really isn't. So to for if we're looking at sustainability, then I think people should be really looking at planting seed rather than, and there are many other things about seed, because they're much better able to withstand drought, because they have a tap root rather than just these surface roots. Better resistant to pests, better resistance to disease, etc.
I just want to go back to something that I wanted to ask earlier and I forgot about. You had told us earlier about how you were the third generation of women running the plantation, which is unusual. Uh, but I also wanted to step back into something else. Now, on tea plantations, we see that a lot of the work, the plucking, tends to be done by women almost exclusively, right? Uh, and the difference here in the way that you've approached this is that the sardars, the supervisors that you mentioned, are, have been traditionally men, and you have begun to change that as well. Could you tell us more about what you've done for the workers who are the women, and changing that whole scenario, and touching upon of course, on your plantation, they're not unused to the fact of a woman running things, being the third generation to do it. But nevertheless, there is always the issue of a woman in what is seen as a man's role is going to be a problem, and dealing with that. So that broad spectrum, if you like, of gender issues and how you deal with them.
So, like I said, Peter, when you think you've cracked something and, it's constantly spiraling, right? So, I think these are all experiments and works in progress. So, I have promoted strong women whom I thought could handle it and were intelligent enough to do the job. So, yeah. So we have a bunch of these women who are sardars. I mean, I don't think it's a big deal because it's actually not a big deal, and I don't know why other tea plantations don't do it. I mean, I just think it's just so ingrained. This patriarchy is so ingrained that they don't even think of doing it. But it's actually really easy and it works fine. It's fine. Everybody accepts it. The women accept it without any issue at all, and I think it works much better because women speak the same language. So we've got a number of sardars who are sardarnis who are actually working both in the factory and in the field. So that's not a big deal. I think I it's very difficult for me to say that job done, everything's okay. Things, issues are so entrenched, problems are so entrenched, whether it's indebtedness is one, alcoholism is another, um, mm, being a single mother is another, because so here's the thing, even though we've got a crash happening, if the kid is sick, then the mother is not going to bring the kid to the crash, right? And then the mother will not end up working that day because she's taking care of the sick kid. So there are a lot of these issues, uh, domestic violence, alcoholism. I mean, and one deals with it like the way it was during the women's movement. People just barged into women, just barged into groups, just barged into women's homes and rescued women. And I mean, it's pretty much that out here as well. I mean, we try and do that. But it's not going away in a hurry. I mean, it's not going to go away in a hurry. And I feel like I wish there were more feminist groups that were working in this area on these issues, because I certainly can't do this on my own. It's too huge. Alcoholism is too huge. I mean, it's at sundown, everyone's drunk. So, including a lot of the women.
Lantra, you had another question you wanted to ask?
Well, this was about something far more frivolous, which was about taste and tea. You had that beautiful slide about the tea leaves that didn't go yellow and didn't go black.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking how one of the shocks when we started drinking a Naxalbari tea, initially, of course, it was like, oh, friends doing something cool, let's support it. But it did something really strange. It spiraled me way back in time, After a while, what I was getting from that was something that I hadn't got from cups of Darjeeling for a bit, which was that sense of specificity, different kinds of tea giving you a sense of different moods almost, to the point where I started to drink the jasmine tea during the day when I was writing and finish off either with a second flush or an oolong. And I kind of came all the way back from being a coffee drinker to being a tea drinker a little bit. I'd forgotten how enjoyable tea could be when it's not monochrome, when it has a bigger range to it. And I just wanted you to take us back, if you will, to two things. I know that time's short for you, but just two things before you go. That first moment when the elephants came and settled at the estate and kind of accepted your hospitality for the first time, and the first cup of tea that you remember after you took over the estate, the first cup of tea that you grew, nurtured, and drank. Could you take us back to that?
Elephants is the easier one. The first cup of tea is kind of hard. I actually don't remember. I don't remember the first aha moment, actually. Every year I struggle. It's really, I know what I'm looking for. And with tea, each cultivar has its specific taste, aroma, flavor. Our 1890 Chinery bushes have an amazing character. Okay. Unfortunately, they're not organic. So, those are the sections which are not organic. But anyway, let me just back up a little bit, telling you about the first time that the elephant stayed. I mean, it's a story that's been told often enough. So I hope I'm forgiven by people who've heard it before. So this was in 2012, and we had just planted 60 acres. 30 acres in a section called 6 East. And this was my first planting, and I was really super proud, and just finished that after many months. And I was just relaxing in the bungalow, and after dinner at about 9:30, 10 at night, I get a call from one of my assistants that Hathi aaya. So I said, okay, Hathi aaya. नहीं, पूरा दल आया. कितना हाथी? करीब 60. ओके. कहाँ है? 6 नंबर बच्चा. I said, what? They're all in 6 East. What should we do? Madam, इनको भगाएं. So at that time I was new. I said, कैसे भगाओगे भाई? So he says, पटाखा करना पड़ेगा. And I was in a fix because, I mean, obviously the garden at that time, I mean, now I can afford to be a little more generous that, okay, so many 100 saplings have been destroyed. But at that time, it was really survival, and this new section was extremely important. So I was really super worried, and I didn't actually know what to do. But then I thought, like, if they're going to be doing pataka, surely it's going to, the animals will run helter-skelter, and then there'll be more damage. So I just told him, I said, look, don't do anything. Just let it be. We'll see in the morning. So that whole night, I couldn't sleep. I was so worried. So at about 4 in the morning, I woke, and I just, it was first light, and put on my clothes, and by 4:30 I was out walking towards. And then I met the chowkidar. I said, where are the elephants? He said, no, they've gone. I said, okay, let's go and let's see what they've damaged. And we did a count. Oh, I've forgotten the number. I think 7 saplings were damaged. Some stupid, like really small number. And Yeah. And that was a real aha moment, that my God, these are just incredible beings, that you have a herd of 60 with their young. And what did they do? Tippy toe through the whole section. They ate up. We had a lot of we'd planted areca nut saplings, because there's this thing ki nahi, you'll get supari and this will generate some more income. So we planted supari all along the roads, and they just made breakfast out of that. But they didn't damage the tea, and that got me thinking that, my God, these are just incredible beings. They're just really, really intelligent, and they know that if they damage this, then they won't be welcome here. And so they've been really super careful. And okay, so we can work with this. So this was the first encounter with elephants. Yeah. And there began a beautiful journey.
There was one more question from Heather, who asked, how can other farms learn from your management style? Can you imagine other estates learning from what you have done?
What have I done with the elephants?
Heather, would you care to clarify on that? Let me just invite you to talk. Heather, you can unmute yourself and talk, and you can ask your question.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Sonia. Good to see you. I have to go catch a plane, so I have to be really fast about this. But what I'm asking is, you're doing something different. You're doing a couple of things different with how you manage people, with how you interact with your employees, and also how wildlife interacts on your estate. How can other farms learn from what you're doing? Is there a mechanism that you can share with other farms, other estates, so that the patriarchal system is not persisting over and over and just repeating itself? Does that make sense?
Well, Heather, I think people have to first be aware that there is a problem, right? Like, if you don't think there's a problem, why would they need to do anything? Right?
Sure.
So,
Right.
so look, most estates, and I will really say this, that most estates in India are struggling. Okay. So they're struggling to survive, they're struggling financially, and people don't know, they actually don't know what to do. It's not easy doing business in India, and it's really difficult. So I think people just think that this is an indulgence, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. We are, like I said, through the Indian Tea Association, I'm hoping that we will be able to expand our footprint, at least in this area, with the wildlife activities in other tea estates, with the workers of other tea estates. So where the management actually doesn't have to do much. It's just the workers and their kids who will be engaging. So if it doesn't cost the management, I don't think they'll mind. But that's the most I can hope for right now. I just don't think there's going to be some, because society has to change. I mean, look at our society. We can't expect businesses to become less patriarchal when society is so patriarchal, and society has so many issues, right?
Yeah, we can't expect miracles. I get that. But I also have observed, having been to different farms, there's something different. You have a good model. And I hope that in some ways you can impart that style to other farms over time. And I get that it's not always possible, but there's something good happening there that other businesses could learn from.
Thank you, Heather. I'd be happy to share with anyone who would like to.
Yeah, I have to run, you guys, but it was great listening.
Thank you, Heather.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Heather. One more pending question there, which I think I do know the answer to, but I will bring that to you. Bharat again, and who wants to know the need for alcohol by sundown that you'd mentioned.
So we're here.
Specific reason?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Could you mute yourself, please?
Yeah.
Sorry. Bharat was asking about the alcohol situation. Why is that such an issue? Why do people drink every day?
It's a historical thing with tea garden workers. They were that these areas actually were not populated, right? And the British imported labor from the Chota Nagpur plateau. They imported Adivasis, and what they gave was free alcohol. Yeah. So there was no money. It was just free alcohol and some grain, I suppose. And so you just have generations seeing alcohol as part of life and as a way of life. So yeah.
And Sonia, we're at 10 o'clock now, and I promised I would let you go and I wouldn't keep you far beyond this. But how do you see the tea business in the future? How do you see this? We've seen the model change over time. You know, the original planters. I mean, and I saw that change in in the south. Like I said, I don't know very much about how it happens in north and northeastern India. But in the south, it was the individual planters first, the monocultures, the big thing. Then those consolidated into larger companies. Then a whole bunch of it was bought up by Tata Tea, and then it's gone back to being a workers' cooperative now. And there are very few, as far as I know, private planters left in the south. There seems to be mainly corporate planting there, even if it's the workers' collectives and so on. And I have zero idea of how it is in Bengal and in Northeast India. How has that changed, and how do you see it further changing, do you think, before we wind up?
So right now there are two models which are operating in the tea industry, which is actually quite frightening for us, because we are known as what's known as set gardens. We are the old traditional tea farms, large estates that have factories and are run by labor laws. We have trade unions. All the gardens have got trade unions. Workers' rights are secured. Workers have homes. Workers have rights. Workers have, wages which are agreed to by, it's a tripartite agreement which happens every 2 years between the trade unions, the government, and the planters' bodies or the owners' bodies, right? So the Indian Tea Association, etc. So earlier, this was the only model of tea growing in India. Then from the 1980s, 1990s, you started having these small tea farms come up, which were, like I said, the farmers who were encouraged to give up food crop for cash crop and growing tea. Now over 50% of Indian tea comes from these small farmers. And in response to these two small tea farms, you have all these independent bought leaf, which it's called bought leaf factories. So they buy the leaf from these farmers and they produce tea, right? So more than 50% of Indian tea today is these small farmers and these bought leaf factories. And you'd be surprised that people like Tatas and Hindustan Levers and things, they buy from these entities rather than from set gardens in the auctions. Okay. Because these entities are not governed by any laws, they don't follow any labor laws, there are no restrictions, there are no nothing. They're able to produce tea much cheaper than us. So I don't know how long we'll last our set gardens, honestly. I've seen this go from 20% to 50%, over 50% in these last 10 years. So I don't see much of a future. I think as long as we're able to produce certain quality which these small tea growers can't do, we'll be okay. Those of us who can. And that's why Naxalbari, I just keep insisting on quality. And this is what we aim for. And we're very, very rigorous about it. But those who can't will just end up folding up. And this is what is happening. There are a lot of gardens that are closing down, have closed down, out of business. Big companies have folded up.
Mhm.
Yeah. Duncan's, I mean, cream, gone. Tata's sold all their gardens.
Yes.
Now they're into trading. Megas had to sell huge estates.
Mhm.
So now, it's a very precarious time, and there's no certainty at all. So, I think, like I told Heather, like what I'm doing, most people would see it as an indulgence. It's just not happening.
But I mean, the plantations that use informal labor, that don't keep to the labor laws, etc. Surely the law, I mean, enforcement of that law in terms of that will catch up at some point, don't you think?
No chance.
Okay.
Vote bank.
I see. So then tea is going to come from, I mean,
Vietnam,
right.
which it is already. Nepal, Vietnam. There's so much they're allowing imports. And so your Tata Agni
Mhm.
is full of rubbish. Sorry, I shouldn't have. That's really. I take that back. I shouldn't have mentioned that brand. But anyway, yeah. But big companies. I mean, it's rubbish. Rubbish teas.
Right. So not a great future then for tea in India.
No. But the thing is, it's like that with all. You see, where's the, it's supply and demand.
Mhm.
If could you imagine, even like if you look at how when we were growing up, I don't know how you were in Bombay, but certainly for us, you could find a dhaba where you'd get good tea anywhere, like railway station, for example. Train stops at a railway station, you hop off, you get a cooler of tea, chai, nice, brewed.
Mhm.
Now what? You get Georgia, it's pink, it tastes of, I don't know what hell, it's horrible. It's full of artificial flavors. It's got sugar like you won't believe. And this is your tea, and it's dispensed all over. And this is the taste that India is getting used to. Right? So if this is the lowest common denominator, then what are you talking about? Like, forget my infusions and it's not happening. We're a dying race.
I hate to end on that kind of a depressing note, but say something nice to close up with. Where do you think, what's the upside? What could be a possible way for tea in India and tea grown the way that you
No,
grow?
Peter, look, I am a realist, okay? We are in a context.
Mhm.
If India continues the way it is on this crazy journey where nothing, look, you know what our coal prices are today? We've gone from 11,000 rupees a metric ton to 23,000 rupees a metric ton in like 6 months. Who can survive? But nobody cares. Nobody speaks. So what are we talking about? So we are just one little part of this great mess that is India today. So if we continue this way, tea, like every other sector, is going to suffer. And this is the truth. We in Naxalbari, because we, somehow or the other, we have Mother Earth's blessings or whatever, we seem to be able to carry on. But it's not a happy situation for most people.
Hmm.
I think, if we have a change in government and a change in ethics of people and a general change in consciousness in this country, I never imagined that I would be saying, I wish we could go back 10 years. But really, I think the degradation of I mean, we're still okay in Bengal, we're still sane here, but there's no getting away.
Right. Yes, there's a lot to unpack there, and I wish we could go on and go back to also to the stuff that you talked about earlier, the life of activism, of the work you were doing before you came back. But perhaps on another day and another time, we will continue those conversations, perhaps not publicly, but it is 15 minutes past the time that I said I would not keep you beyond. And I know that you have a very early start tomorrow. So, Sonia Jabbar, thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
taking the time for this conversation. And I hope it's not as dismal as you think it might be. Though, of course, I know that you're on the ground and you understand this far better than I do.
But Peter, just 1 minute. It's not not nothing is depressing actually. It's not. Something else will happen. Something else will evolve. It's nothing to freak out about. We are a 19th century industry. Like, who could have imagined textiles would be wiped out of Bombay, right? Yeah. So these are cycles, and these are, I mean, people prefer to drink coffee and Coke and Pepsi and all of these. So will quality tea survive? I mean, Darjeeling is a failed region today. You won't believe how many Darjeeling gardens have shut down, how many Darjeeling gardens are struggling. It's an impossible situation between climate change and market and the fact that there's no support. It's absolutely frightening. I mean, excuse me, Darjeeling gardens can only manufacture, they've got even a shorter growing span than we do. And because they're in the mountains, they're on very, very high elevations, they don't have the kind of land that we do. And so their produce is their production is very small. They go, from 50,000 kilos a year to to maybe, bigger gardens are 130,000 kilos a year. But that's it, 150,000 kilos a year. It's nothing. What do they get? How can they survive? The best teas that we sell in the auctions are best. This is like amazing. The gardens that are doing really well today, they're selling at 300 rupees a kilo. Okay. We are around 260, 270 rupees a kilo. And we think, wow, fabulous. Darjeeling, there are some flushes that they get 300, 400, 500, 1200. And, once in a while, you'll have some garden that will sell, some export invoice of 20 kilos for 6,000 rupees. And everyone will be like, wow, 20,000 rupees. Wow. What about the rest of the produce? They're not able to sell it. And Nepal tea is flooding in. And it's as good, if not better than Darjeeling. So why should a Marwari trader pay 6,000 rupees for Darjeeling if he's getting 600 rupees from Nepal? Look at it from their point of view. They're not going to do it.
I see that, but not trying to end on a false note of hope, but the other image from your slides that really struck me was, I think I was very startled to see how rapidly the forest regenerated.
Yes.
And I find myself just wishing that there was money in doing that. I know this is a completely, I mean, of course, it doesn't make
So,
anybody.
Nilanjana, this
do
is
that.
the amazing thing about Bengal, okay?
Mhm.
Himachal and Uttarakhand, you cannot regenerate forests like this. Not so fast. Here we can, because things just grow. We are in this magical land, you can just see like that magic mushroom going boom, 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 boom. It's like that. So this reforestation or this rewilding that I did, I didn't have money. Pradeep Kishan came because I tried for 7 years to grow this forest and it wasn't happening. And finally I got Pradeep to come. Please come, you're the tree guy, right? So he came with this other friend Vijay Dasmana, and they went around the garden and they went around this area and things. And I thought, some technical thing they'll say. And they turned and they said, look at the cattle you have. Look at the goats. Not mine, it's the workers' cattle and the goats. They were eating up everything. He said, you have to fence. Nothing will grow. I said, I can't fence like, how will I do 100 acres? How can I fence 100 acres? Can't fence. Don't have the money. So I started with 5 acres, and that too, I crowdfunded that. Right? I crowdfunded that, got the money, bought the fencing, fenced it, and then created this magic. It was amazing. So what did I do? I actually got, so Pradeep was really helpful. We went to the local forest. We actually walked around. We got a list. We made a list of the trees, the native species trees. Then I sourced the seeds of these trees. We created a nursery of some 12 species. And then I planted. And this amazing thing happened.
Just take off from what Nilanjana was saying, that I am seeing this increased interest, and that people who have had the time to think about it are looking at, going back to the soil, growing things on their own, finding that magic that you mentioned of just growing your own things and what that can mean. People are looking at doing things like food forests in urban areas, forget about other things, Another person I know is just invested in buying land to create a food forest and some, more conventional agriculture as well. And I think that these are drops in the ocean, of course. There's this small amount of people who have the luxury of being able to think along these lines and think beyond subsistence and have the money to be able to put into something like this. But I think that the fact that these things are happening in different kinds of ways. Vishwanath here, who's in the chat, who's known as Zen Rain Man on Twitter, has been doing amazing work on water restoration, right? Conserving of water, water harvesting, and guiding out in the villages, looking at how people harvest stuff. And he's been doing stuff in urban contexts as well. Other conversations that I've been having about this, there's an amazing amount of things happening. And I think that as more of that happens, it's inevitable. We are living in a world of such, the effects of climate change are there to see, right? You don't need a PhD anymore to understand what is happening. You just see the more severe monsoons, you see the drastic weather events, all of these things happening, and hopefully that is going to wake up more people and maybe see some more change in that area. But deforestation, the elephant corridors, all of these things are wonderful work. And I'd like to wind up with Sumita Taneja has said something in the chat, and I think that sort of sums it up for me. She says, wonderful to hear you, Sonia Lee. You are such an inspiration. And Sonia, you are. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot
for this.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who stayed.
That's very sweet.
Yeah. And we'll be back on Table Talk again in a fortnight. And as of now, these conversations are only live. I am recording. They will come up eventually on YouTube and stuff like that. But right now, the experiment is, will you come? Will you hang out? Will you chat with us? And hey, thank you, everyone who did. And Sonia, thank you so much.
Thanks a million, Peter. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, all, and thank you. Thank you too.